I am Vivian. When Jason returned from his business trip, he caught me kissing my lover. I didn't hide or panic. I simply raised my hand and calmly slapped my lover twice. Then I looked at Jason, my tone firm and sincere. I love you. I only love you. My soul belongs only to you. They are all just weeds by the roadside. He stood at the door, his fingers trembling slightly, as if struck by something. I looked at him, my eyes innocent, my expression calm. You see, you said the same thing back then. I believed you and forgave you. Now it's my turn. You'll forgive me too, won't you? The phone rang. I leaned against the sofa and answered it casually. It was Jason. He said he was coming home for dinner. All right, I'll ask Mrs. Wilson to prepare a few more of your favorite dishes. I replied softly, my voice gentle and tinged with a smile. Madam, would you like to personally prepare a bowl of soup for your husband? I would be honored. He teased on the other end of the line, his tone familiar and affectionate. I just smiled but didn't respond. I couldn't remember the last time I had cooked for him. Back then, my entire life revolved around Jason. During my free time at work, I would buy him clothes, surprise him with gifts, and even cook soup for him. Those were the ways I expressed my love. Now, I no longer have that interest. I don't think Jason and I need these extra sweet gestures anymore. Soon, Jason's secretary called. She sounded urgent, asking if Mr. Jason had arrived home yet, as there was an important meeting at the office. I curled my lips into a mocking smile. He said he was coming home, so he shouldn't be too far away. Why don't you try calling him and see if you can stop him? Jason wasn't coming back. After all, the call had come to me. Sure enough, not long after, I received his message. There was an urgent matter at the office. He wouldn't be coming home for dinner. Men always think their lies are airtight. Little do they know that in a woman's eyes, they're already full of holes. For years ago, I would have cried in front of him, and he would have apologized humbly. But now, I don't even feel the urge to find out. The only thing I regret is the meal Mrs. Wilson had prepared. I got up, changed my clothes, and left. The car stopped at the entrance of a university. Soon, a young man ran over, his face glowing in the sunlight, smiling like a puppy. You finally came to see me. He rushed over, his eyes brimming with excitement. I reached out and ruffled his hair, my smile gentle and indulgent. Over the years, I've come to understand why there's never a shortage of women around Jason. With a young, vibrant college student by my side, I felt a few years younger myself. I took Ethan back to the apartment. I didn't expect Jason to come home that night. The phone rang while I was cuddling with Ethan. I sat up and answered the call. Ethan lowered his head, his ears turning red, sitting quietly beside me. I'm out. You weren't home, and I was bored, so I went out for a walk. Since Jason was back, I couldn't stay there anymore. I stood up and spread my arms. Ethan understood and immediately stood up, picking out clothes for me as usual. He handed me a brightly colored dress. Clearly, it was a gift he had prepared earlier. I raised my eyebrows slightly but didn't refuse. After changing and returning home, Jason was sitting on the living room sofa. He looked up, his gaze lingering on me for a moment, a flash of admiration in his eyes. When did you buy that? I remained composed. I just happened to pass by a store and tried it on. I was too lazy to take it off, so I just bought it. He suddenly stood up, approached me, and whispered in my ear. It looks beautiful. It reminds me of when we first got married. I held the hem of my skirt and spun around, trying to move away from him. I didn't know when it started, but his closeness made me instinctively feel repulsed. The more affectionate he became, the harder it was for me to suppress the anger in my heart. But he wouldn't give up, pulling me into his arms. I looked up and met the familiar intensity in his eyes. The next second, he lifted me up and pressed me onto the sofa. What are you doing? I couldn't control my voice, which carried a hint of disgust. Luckily, he didn't notice. I quickly composed myself and adopted a half-reluctant, half-teasing tone. "Stop it, I haven't taken a shower yet. Get off me." I tried to slip out from under him, but he wouldn't give me a chance. Jason had already kissed me, his movements urgent, his hands eagerly reaching down. I stopped moving. Better to die sooner than later. It seemed like the secretary hadn't managed to keep him today. The next morning, while having breakfast, I received a call. "Sure, I'm free this afternoon." Jason was reading the newspaper and heard my voice, lifting his head slightly. "What's up?" I smiled at him, trying to sound casual. "Em asked me to accompany her on a blind date." "How old is she?" "Sia M, Jason's secretary." His expression didn't change much. He just replied casually, "I don't know. Stay out of this. If something goes wrong, you'll be the one to blame." I lowered my head and took a sip of milk, saying nothing more. After all, she hadn't called me to tell me this. In the afternoon, I arrived on time for the date. On the way there, Sia M's conversation barely strayed from Jason, her tone tinged with subtle provocation. Where Mr. Jason had gone during his business trip to Thailand, how Mr. Jason had pushed through a project against all opposition. I listened, finding it amusing. Does talking about this even matter? If you're so capable, go ahead and seduce Jason into divorcing me. Even in the first year, when he was still hooked, it didn't work. It's even less likely now. All this chatter is getting annoying. After a moment of thought, I looked up and feigned surprise. "Hey, you're still wearing that necklace?" She instinctively touched her neck, her expression momentarily uneasy. Then she whispered, "Because I really like it, I've been wearing it all along." I nodded, my tone gentle. "It's nice that you like it. I was the one who picked it up back then. At the time, Jason said you were his junior colleague, and he'd just closed a big deal, so he asked me to help pick out a gift. I bought 3 in total. The other 2 are now on Shadow's legs at my place." I leaned in closer to her, a faint smile on my lips. "But you wear it best." "I've always had good taste." Sia M's expression twisted slightly. I didn't pay much attention to it. What mattered was that the world had returned to its peaceful state. What surprised me was that she and her date were actually chatting quite animatedly. I sat there, watching the two of them chatting and laughing, and suddenly had an idea. Should I call Jason and tell him? His ex-girlfriend seems to be about to be taken over by someone else. I wonder what his reaction will be. Sia M's blind date drama ultimately didn't cause much of a stir. A few days later, Jason went on another business trip. This time, he didn't bring her, his personal secretary. I looked down at my phone and stared at a photo on the screen. A college girl was standing at the entrance of a luxurious residential area waiting for a car. She looked pure and beautiful, probably Jason's new girlfriend. The photo was sent anonymously. As expected, it was probably sent by Sia M. I couldn't help but snort in derision. Did she really expect me, the original wife, to help her, the mistress, get rid of the other mistress? Jason refuses to divorce me. No matter how much I struggle, it's all just a joke. It only erases unnecessary things and adds unnecessary troubles. All the struggles in this cage called marriage are in vain. What a mood killer first thing in the morning. I changed into a different outfit and went to Ethan's apartment. At times like this, I needed a loyal little puppy to comfort my wounded heart. Ethan can cook, play the piano, and give massages. No matter what I do, he stays by my side without complaining. Only when I'm with him can I truly relax. Over the past 2 weeks, I've spent almost all my free time here. I had planned to just wait quietly until Jason returned from his business trip, but unexpectedly, I received a call. It was Ryan. If Ethan is a gentle, homebody puppy, then Ryan is a wild, untamed wolf dog. I drove home, and he was already waiting nearby. I let him inside. He's different from Ethan. He craves excitement. When he first suggested coming to my place, I was taken aback. That was the space I shared with Jason, at least in name. But later, I began to understand Jason. I understood why he had brought other women into our bedroom. It was different. Certain sensory experiences are destined to happen only after breaking the rules. Jason taught me what destruction is. Now, I'm just following his example. Unexpected things always happen when you least expect them. Jason came back early. He said he'd be away on a business trip for a month, but it had only been 20 days. When he pushed open the door, Ryan was naked from the waist up. And I was wrapped around his neck, kissing him passionately. The food on the table was still hot, all prepared by Ryan. Jason kicked the table over with one foot. Soup splashed everywhere, dishes shattered, and the noise was deafening. Ryan instinctively stepped in front of me, shielding me from the flying shards of plates and bowls. He gave Jason a defiant smile. "Mr. Jason, such a temper, what have you hurt, Vivi?" Jason's face turned pale, and he stood there motionless. His expression was exactly like mine 4 years ago, when I saw him entangled with that beautiful young woman on the sofa. What did Jason do back then? Oh, right, he slapped the girl across her arrogant face. So I pushed Ryan aside and slapped him twice across the face. The blows were hard, and the red marks quickly appeared on his face. "Who gave you the right to speak to him like that?" Ryan froze, his eyes filled with disbelief. I remained calm, uttering only 3 words, "Get out." He stormed out angrily, leaving only Jason and me in the living room. We stood facing each other in silence, surrounded by the mess on the floor. I walked up to him and gently smoothed out the wrinkled collar of his shirt. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let him show up in front of you. This time, it was really an accident." I looked into his eyes and spoke each word slowly. "Jason, I love you. I only love you." Jason suddenly grabbed my neck and demanded, his voice trembling, "You love me. How could you love me and treat me like this?" I didn't resist. I just hugged him gently. "They're all unworthy outsiders. You're the only one who matters to me." Jason heard this, his body trembled slightly, and he loosened his grip. He stood there, swaying unsteadily. "Those words sound familiar. You're blaming me." "No, Vivian, are you seeking revenge on me?" "No. Of course not. I just want to leave you. But you won't let me. So I can only be a good student." Thus, I slowly knelt down, just as he had done 4 years ago. I repeated his words exactly as he had spoken them. "Jason, believe me. I couldn't possibly love anyone else. I belong only to you. Forgive me. For years ago, I forgave you. So now, Jason, will you forgive me?" Jason looked at me kneeling on the ground, suddenly grabbed the ashtray, and smashed it against the wall with all his strength. A loud crash echoed, shards flying everywhere, his eyes bloodshot. "Vivian, besides what happened 4 years ago, what have I done to deserve this? Have I not been good enough for you?" "No, you've been good to me." I looked up and stared at the man I'd loved for years. He remembered every single one of my menstrual cycles. He remembered my favorite animals, the candies I liked to eat, and my love for coffee. When it got cold, he'd remind me to wear more clothes. When I threw tantrums, broke things, or said harsh words, he never retaliated. He just listened quietly. I loved his tenderness, his thoughtfulness, and his. I even loved every expression he unintentionally revealed in his moments of joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness. Back then, Jason defied everyone's opposition and insisted on marrying me, a woman of ordinary background. At that moment, I firmly believed in the forever and always in his vows. I was ready to respond to that vow with all the passion of my life. So, 4 years ago, when I saw that scene, I felt like the sky had fallen. I couldn't accept it and threw a hysterical fit demanding a divorce. But he refused. As long as he wouldn't agree, I couldn't leave. During that time, I exhausted all my strength grieving and struggling. But time is the most patient of all. It slowly eroded the cracks in my heart and gradually stripped away my obsession with love. In the end, like the other wives in this circle, I accepted his apology. I cried, I fought, but life went on as usual. Later, I even began to understand Jason. The world is so vast. How could there be no temptations? When faced with temptation, he chose to abandon me. So, similarly, I don't have to maintain my dignity in the face of temptation. Jason smashed everything he could in the house. Finally, he collapsed onto the sofa, his head buried in his hands. "Get up." His voice was hoarse, but he couldn't suppress his anger. "Vivian, what do you want from him? His youth? His face? Didn't I have youth too?" I stood up and walked over to him. "Jason, I've told you, you don't need to care about him. He's like someone I call for a drink or a ride. It's meaningless." Jason stared at me, his expression slowly breaking down. After a long time, he gave a cold laugh. "Tell me, how much of what I said back then do you remember? Which words made you feel the most insulted, the most hurt?" I thought for a moment and shook my head. Over the past 2 years, I've rehearsed, refined, and imagined today in my mind countless times. Even his reactions were something I'd considered in multiple scenarios. What I should do, what I shouldn't do, I've done it all. What I should say, what I shouldn't say, I've said it all. Now, it's up to Jason's choice. I turned and went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and handed it to Jason. "Jason, I've been through what you're feeling. If you want a divorce..." "Shut up." He suddenly stood up and slammed the glass cup out of my hand onto the ground. "Vivian, have you always wanted a divorce? Even cheating to get a divorce? I'm telling you, you're delusional." He suddenly closed in on me, his eyes filled with madness. "Vivian, you're mine. You'll never leave me in this lifetime." Jason forgave me. He said that as long as I cut all ties with Ryan, he'd pretend nothing ever happened. I nodded in agreement. Of course, Jason wouldn't let Ryan off the hook. I had no objections. After all, back then, to help me vent my anger, Jason nearly killed that girl. Over the next month, Jason was like a different person. He came home on time every day to eat dinner. As soon as he walked in the door, he would come find me and say some sweet nothings. Even during work breaks, he would always send me messages. If I didn't respond within 5 minutes, he would immediately call me on video to make sure I was there. I didn't mind. After all, for years ago, I was the one who was truly hysterical. Back then, I even needed him to stay by my side all day, letting me tear into him and vent my anger. I am so grateful to Jason. During the most painful and despairing days of my life, he was the one who comforted me and stayed by my side. He gave me time to heal and reflect, allowing me to end my youthful romance with a calm heart. Now, it's time to return the favor. I will do the same for Jason. Ryan was blocking the entrance to my office building. I ignored him and walked straight into the cafe across the street. He followed me inside. It seems that Jason has really cracked him down during this time. He's lost a lot of weight, his eyes are sunken, and there's no trace of his former sharpness. He doesn't look anything like he did when we first met. He sat down across from me, suddenly placed his hand over mine, and gripped it tightly. "Vivi, are you okay?" I didn't answer, just lowered my gaze and pulled my hand away. "Ryan, we shouldn't see each other anymore." My tone was calm, almost cold, with no trace of lingering emotion. He froze, a look of shock flashing across his eyes. "Vivi, did Jason force you to do this? I can take you away, leave this place, move to another city." I gently interrupted him. "Ryan, you deleted the messages Jason sent me." "What? What?" He blinked, not processing what I'd said. Back when we were dating, Jason almost boarded the flight that crashed. I was nearly devastated. Ever since then, he'd send me a message every time he boarded or landed a flight. He must have sent one that day too. I looked at Ryan, my expression unchanged. From the moment you appeared before me, I knew who you were and what you wanted. Ryan, for the sake of how I used you, let me give you some advice. Leave City A. Jason won't let you go. I raised my hand and pointed out the window. The bodyguard who had been following us closely since we entered the cafe. Then I stood up and left the cafe. 3 years ago, Jason wanted to acquire a startup company. The partners had differing opinions, and Ryan was in the opposing camp. As a result, he was framed and kicked out of the company. His only sister, who was his sole family, died because they couldn't afford treatment. After, Ryan lost everything because of Jason. He wanted to use me as a pawn to take revenge on Jason. He thought I would be the knife. What a coincidence. The moment he appeared, I had already shuffled the deck. He was also my sharpest boomerang. However, in this game of revenge, no one won. 10. When I returned home, as expected, Jason was already waiting for me. He sat on the living room sofa, a cigarette between his fingers, but he never lit it. He hadn't smoked in a long time. Because I can't stand the smell of smoke. Where were you? His voice was hoarse, suppressing a sense of unease. Ryan came to the company to confront me, and I settled things with him. Besides, weren't your people following me the whole time? As the words fell, his gaze flickered slightly. Vivi? He seemed to want to explain something. I walked up to him, raised my hand, and gently interrupted him. Jason, you don't need to explain. For years ago, I did the same. I even hired 4 private detectives to follow him. His suspicion, anxiety, and loss of control. I understood it all. I walked closer to him, wrapped my arms around him, and tried to comfort him. He lowered his head, almost touching my forehead. Just as our lips were about to touch, he suddenly stopped. Vivi, I have some things to take care of in the study. After saying that, he turned and left as if he were escaping. The study door clicked shut, like a barrier. I stood there, watching his back disappear. Moments later, I slowly sat back on the sofa. I closed my eyes and smiled softly. Look, Jason. You say you forgive me, but there's still that thorn in your heart. It's not deep enough to be fatal, but it's enough to make someone want to avoid you at all costs. While taking a shower, I received a call. Vivi? It was Ryan. I'm at the airport. His voice was low and trembling. If you can, would you come with me? I admit, my intentions weren't pure when I first approached you, but later, I truly fell in love. I didn't wait for him to finish and hung up the phone. Love? Does Jason not love me? Back then, when I was kidnapped, he cried and begged on his knees. Now that I've cheated on him, he's gritting his teeth and refusing to divorce me. But none of that stopped him from betraying me. Ryan, you approached me with the sole purpose of revenge from the very beginning. How dare you say you love me? Why not just be honest and admit it was a mutual arrangement? When Ethan called, his voice was clearly filled with fear. Jason had sent someone to kick him out of the apartment. I comforted him softly for a moment, then sent Jason a message. I wasn't surprised that Jason would find Ethan. If Ryan was a knife that had come crashing into my life, then Ethan was just an accident, and the fact that we got along well was completely unexpected. The day I met Ethan was a rainy day, and he saved me. Later, when his family was in trouble, I helped him out. At first, I just wanted to keep Ethan like Jason keeps his women, as a pet. He was clean, obedient, didn't cause trouble, and didn't ask for the future. But later, the light in Ethan's eyes, which he tried so hard to hide, made me panic. I had lost something before, so I knew how precious love was. And how much someone worth having deserves to be cherished. But I couldn't give him any of that. No matter how much I tried to look young, I wasn't the 20-year-old Vivian anymore. Time wouldn't allow me to be 10 years younger and reach out to pull him up. Actually, I had already decided that before the end of this year, I would cut all ties with Ethan. But I never expected Ryan's schemes to disrupt all my plans and drag Ethan into it as well. When I returned home, the house was unusually quiet. Jason was in the study. I pushed open the door and saw him sitting at the desk with a stack of photos spread out in front of him. The photos were of Ethan and me. He looked up, his voice as cold as ice. "So, this is your true love, huh?" The next moment, he grabbed the photos and threw them at my face with all his strength. One photo cut my cheek, burning with pain. Jason stood up, his eyes filled with raw hatred for the first time. "Vivian, how many men have you been with? You're so cruel. I made one mistake, and you're using a bunch of men to get back at me?" He screamed wildly. I stood there, slowly raising my hand to wipe the blood from my face. Then I looked up and stared at him quietly. "Jason, spare Ethan. He knows nothing." Those words were like a spark igniting a bomb. He knows nothing? He knows nothing, and yet he dares to hold your hand? Kiss your face? Sleep with you? Vivian, he dared to touch my people, and he'll pay the price. I closed my eyes and sighed softly. Then I took out my phone and pulled up the photo. "Do you recognize her?" Jason glared at me with anger. In an instant, his expression turned cold. In the photo, a beautiful girl was dancing the Swan Lake on stage. "She must be your new girlfriend, right?" I smiled. "How's her technique?" "From the way she moved just now, her waist is pretty flexible." Jason opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. The study fell into complete silence. "Jason, do you know when I met Ethan?" I broke the silence. He sneered, as if to mock me. But then he seemed to think of something and swallowed it back. 2 years ago, Sia came to visit our house. I turned my head and looked at him. That feeling was obvious. Whether there's a relationship or not, you can tell from little expressions and gestures. Jason stiffened, forcing himself to argue. "She's my junior colleague." "How could I?" "Jason." I interrupted him softly. "I saw it. That day, you said you were going back to the office to work overtime, but you went to a hotel instead." "I followed you." He froze, as if struck by a blow to the head. "Vivi, I didn't do anything with her. At least, it wasn't as casual as you think." Jason hurriedly explained. I just nodded, looking calm, as if I were talking about someone else's story. "That day, I was actually going to tell you that we have a baby." The color drained from Jason's face. "Later, I went to the hospital alone and had an abortion. Right after the procedure, you called me, saying you had to go to Thailand on a business trip. It was raining that day. I stood under an umbrella at the bridge for a long time. I didn't want to die in such a disgraceful way, but at that moment, I really didn't want to live either. Then I met Ethan." Jason suddenly rushed forward, gripping my hands tightly, his voice almost pleading. "Vivi, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You knew everything." I looked at him, my expression calm. "Jason, I'm telling you this not to hear you say, I'm sorry. You were away on a business trip, and Sia took good care of you. I'm grateful for that. Similarly, Ethan has been taking care of me on your behalf. In a way, he saved me, he saved your wife. As my husband, you should be grateful to him. Otherwise..." I paused. 2 years ago, when you came back from your business trip, that's what you saw, my body." Jason knelt down. "Just like 4 years ago." This was the second time he had knelt down to apologize to me. But I wouldn't give him a third chance to hurt me. I took out the documents I had prepared earlier and placed them gently in front of him. "Jason, let's get a divorce. Let's let each other go." He stared at the agreement for a long time. Then he tore it up. He looked at me with red eyes, his voice hoarse. "Vivi, unless I die, I will never divorce you. I can change, I swear. I can also let Ethan go, as long as you're willing to start over with me. Start over again. But in this world, there aren't that many new beginnings. Not all cracks can be mended as good as new. I looked at him, my eyes cold. Jason, do you think? I never considered starting over with you. But every time I was willing to open my heart to you again, someone would come along and remind me how foolish I was. The words I'd suppressed for so long finally burst out. Do you also start to feel that kissing me makes you sick? Do you also imagine how I'm passionately entangled with someone else? Funny, I do too. And I've endured this sickening feeling for 4 years. All that's left between us is testing, suspicion, and mutual torment. Do you want us to spend the rest of our lives in agony like this? I leaned against the table, finally unable to hold back, lowering my head to wipe away the tears slowly trickling down the corners of my eyes. No, it's not like that. Jason suddenly rushed over, grabbing me tightly, his movements almost. That day, I just wasn't ready. His kiss fell upon me, filled with panic, fear, and the struggle of unwillingness. I stared at him with wide eyes, my body stiff, unable to respond. I couldn't respond. That was the last kiss between Jason and me. He wanted to go back to where we first met and start over with me. So he got in the car, took me with him, and drove toward our alma mater at full speed. But on the way, the brakes failed. Jason glanced at me. That glance was filled with a disorienting tenderness. Vivi, don't be afraid. After saying those 3 words, he suddenly jerked the steering wheel. The next second, he pressed me firmly into the passenger seat. The violent collision was accompanied by a deafening crash. When everything fell silent, all I could see was him slumped over the steering wheel. Blood was gushing from his chest. It was Ryan who did this. Those photos were also sent to Jason by him. If Jason hadn't been distracted, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. I stood at the entrance to the emergency room, covering my face, finally breaking down in tears. It turns out that when you're about to lose someone, you forget all their flaws. All that remains in your mind is how he once held an umbrella for you, bowed his head for you, and shielded you from the wind and rain. My confidence played a cruel joke on me. I thought I had long since become indifferent. I never expected it to hurt this much. At that moment, I began to regret it for the first time. Maybe I should have stopped Jason. I knew Ryan hadn't left. He had sent me an anonymous text message. I got into that car with the intention of dying together. Jason said that unless he died, he wouldn't divorce me. At that moment, I thought, then let's die together. But I never imagined that he would use his last ounce of strength to protect me. The Jason I once wanted to spend the rest of my life with had finally left. What happened afterward felt like a long, blurry dream. Ryan was taken away by the police, suspected of premeditated murder. I didn't go to see him, and I don't plan to ever see him again. I gave the apartment to Ethan. There was no goodbye, no explanation. He was the warmth I briefly found, but I shouldn't leave any traces behind. I packed my things and left City A for City B. On the day I left, the sky was clear, and the sun was shining brightly. There was still sadness in my heart, but there was also a hint of lightness. When I arrived in City B, someone came to pick me up at the airport. The person had beautiful eyes, single eyelids, and a mature, reserved demeanor. Every movement was gentle and steady. This person was unknown to Ryan and Jason. I had met him by chance at a club when I first came to City B. He bore a slight resemblance to Jason, so I kept his contact information. Now, I desperately needed someone to help me overcome the pain of losing Jason. Perhaps I would channel the guilt I had felt all these years into him. I understood Jason once again. In the past, when I looked at the women around Jason, they all reminded me of myself. I felt uncomfortable and even a bit ridiculous. Now, I'm starting to seek comfort by following his example. But I'm more decent than Jason. I waited until he was dead before finding a lookalike. He, on the other hand, found a lookalike while I was still alive, as if I were already dead. Perhaps the rest of my life won't be filled with overly sweet happiness. But it won't be filled with the agonizing pain of a broken heart either. This is fine too. Jason's side story. We had planned to go home for dinner that night. But Xia stopped me at the last minute, saying there was an important meeting she needed me to attend. I knew what she was thinking. I just didn't care. Besides, I wanted to see Vivian's reaction. After the meeting, everyone naturally moved on to the socializing. I swirled the wine glass in my hand, glancing at my phone, which hadn't moved, every now and then. I could feel it, but I dared not think too deeply about it. For years ago, whenever I went out for socializing, Vivian would always call to ask if I had arrived. She would ask if the food was good and if the waitstaff were attractive. Those little jealousy and thoughtfulness were impossible to hide. If I didn't come home by 9 o'clock at night, she would call every half hour, refusing to give up. Although I would brush her off with words, I was actually happy inside. Back then, Vivian cared about me. But now, why isn't my phone ringing? Sometimes I feel like a dog abandoned by Vivian. Left out in the wind and rain. No one remembers to bring me home. If the mountain won't come to me, I'll have to go to the mountain. I stood up to bid everyone farewell and prepare to leave. Xia followed behind, seeming to have tripped. I didn't look back. At that moment, I just wanted to see Vivian. But when I got home, all that greeted me was a table of cold food. I felt a strange sense of panic. I quickly dialed her number. Thankfully, she answered right away. At that moment, I couldn't help but sigh in relief. When Vivian came back, she was wearing a brightly colored dress, looking young and vibrant. In a daze, I seemed to see her as she was when we first got married. I kissed her wildly, held her tightly, and couldn't wait to become one with her. But I dared not think deeply about it. How long had Vivian not dressed up like this? Who is she dressing up for today? I never expected Xia to dare to contact Vivian. It seems that I had indeed given her face in everyday life. I immediately had HR contact her to process her resignation. She stormed into my office, furious. Jason, I really didn't do anything. I've been with you for 2 years. When have I ever caused trouble? I looked up at her, my expression cold. You caused trouble? You're just a mistress. What right do you have to cause trouble? When you were shamelessly climbing your way up, you should have known this would be your fate. Now that you're old and ugly, do you really think I'd still want you? I waved my hand, signaling the security guard to escort her out. I also specifically instructed them to warn her not to show her face in front of Vivian again. There's an upcoming project in M country that requires a 1-month business trip. In the past, I always brought Xia along, but this time I'll have to bring a younger woman instead. Men and women are different. When men are under pressure, they always need an outlet. There are some things I can't bring myself to do to Vivian. But others don't matter. The project went smoothly and was completed in 20 days. The first thing I did upon landing was send Vivian a message as usual. Then I went home. I thought she'd come running over to hug me and ask if I was tired, just like before. But to my horror, I witnessed a scene that broke my heart into pieces. She was kneeling on the ground begging for my forgiveness. The scene from 4 years ago had repeated itself, but with different protagonists. It felt like a boomerang, striking me precisely where I was most vulnerable. It turned out she had never forgiven me. But it doesn't matter. As long as she's willing to stay by my side, as long as she doesn't divorce me, time will eventually heal all wounds. We still have plenty of time. We will definitely grow old together. As for Ryan, I will handle it. Just like the woman who appeared before Vivian back then, I will handle it cleanly. But I never imagined. Forgiveness is so difficult. I can't even kiss her anymore. She's right there in front of me, and I love her so deeply. I can't touch her without feeling any resentment. What should I do? How can I embrace Vivian again without any resentment? When I saw the photos of Vivian and Ethan, I felt a sense of closure. It turned out that the dress she had carefully chosen that day was for him. I hate it. But my hatred didn't even have time to burn before it was extinguished. It turns out Vivian knew everything. She took out her phone and showed me one photo after another. Those women I thought I had hidden so well. The mistress, the fourth mistress, the fifth mistress, the sixth mistress. I stood there in a daze, like a criminal. It turns out we once had a child. I was so desperate to win Vivian back. But fate refused to give me another chance. The brakes had been tampered with. I clung to Vivian with all my strength. Vivi, if there is another life, I will never betray you. The end.